The disciplines that are essential in the Spiritual Aspirant, Part 2. Sri Muruganar, translated and presented by Robert Butler.
Thank you. Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Arunachalar Ramanaaya. We'll start today with the prayer song.
Paralambamura பரிபக்குவருக்கு ஒராலம்பனமான உளத்துளியாய் பராலம்பமுற பரிபக்குவருக்கு ஒரு ஆலம்பனமான உளத்துளியாய் நிராலம்ப அருள் பரமாய் நின்ற ஒரு ஆலம்பனமான உளத்துளியாய் நிராலம்ப அருள் பரமாய் நின்ற நின்கராலம்பம் எனக்கருள் அங்கணனே கராலம்பம் எனக்கருள் அங்கணனே.
Fair-eyed one, you who shine within the heart as the supreme refuge, the light that gives sanctuary to those of deep spiritual maturity, may you in grace grant me the support of your divine hand that without any support of its own fills infinity with its compassion.
Namaskaram, everyone. So we'll get started with the next 4 disciplines. So last session we looked at the disciplines we call neṟis, the neṟis from the 1 through 4. So today we'll start with neṟi 5. Anand, please go ahead.
அகந்தை ஒழியவே அமர நிலையாம் அகந்தை தியாகம் அரிதிலும் அரிது. அகந்தை ஒழிவே அமர நிலையாம் அகந்தை தியாகம் அரிதிலும் அரிது.
Robert, please.
Eradication of the ego is the state of immortality. Therefore, the renunciation of the ego is that which is most rare and precious.
So regarding this neṟi, Robert pointed out a couple of Guru Ashakove verses. As you all know, Guru Ashakove is a collection of sayings of Bhagavan recorded by Sri Muruganar. Go ahead, Robert.
Birth and death attach themselves to you solely through the delusion of regarding the alien body as your true being. Therefore, the moment this powerful delusion is destroyed, immortality, your own true nature, is attained.
Okay.
Death is nothing other than the delusion that rises by taking the alien body as I. Immortality is nothing other than the bliss of the self, the distinction-free consciousness that merges with you when the ego, that delusion, dies.
Okay. Do you have any further comments on this neṟi, Robert?
Yeah, I'm looking at my own translation. I use the word eradication, which could be confusing because eradication could indicate the state of being eradicated or the act of eradicating. So I probably should have used a word like cessation, because this is not an act, this is not a doing. Therefore, when I republish this, I would probably change that word to something like cessation, because it's not something that you do consciously. And I just got the note that we become convinced that we are mortal from early childhood and so on, and then we complain that immortality is beyond our reach. But if we remain in our true state, no question of mortality or immortality can arise, because there are no thoughts. And just one other thing on that, I was reading Bhagavan the other day and came across this about, the ego can't kill itself. The question is, what is the best way to get rid of thoughts? And Bhagavan said, is it the mind that tries to kill itself? How can the thief catch himself? It can't be. So the best way is to try to realize your real nature, what you really are. When we see ourselves, then there are no thoughts to get rid of mortality or immortality, for example.
Right.
That's that for that one.
Okay. So let me go back to the Neṟi. So that's the Neṟi we were just talking about. Eradication of the ego is a state of immortality. Therefore, the renunciation of the ego is that which is most rare and precious. So this point.
Yeah, I'm just going to add that this is the whole sadhana. It's the purpose of it and the goal of it all wrapped into one. So if we get rid of the ego, doing it is the goal. So it's like the whole Neṟi, the whole thing.
Exactly.
The way it sums up the whole of the collection of neṟis, in one phrase.
Right. At this point, I would like to see if any of the devotees have any questions for Robert.
Yeah, this is Stephen.
Please.
What I'm dealing with is a friend of mine in suicide. And it's just really ironic these verses would come up today. So I have it in my thoughts or understanding, and I can't quite articulate it, but maybe Robert can help me understand ego and suicide, especially with when you use the word eradication. That's what brought this whole thought up, is that it's an act. When you said eradication was an act where you want to use something different like secession. And that's where the thought came from. So can you say something around suicide, ego, and the immortality? Or, us moving on from the vessel that we have, because we don't really kill ourselves. We may kill the body. Does that make sense?
Yeah. We can only really work with what we've got, and I can't put myself in the position of your suicidal friend, and neither can you. So the way we can help them is to focus our attention inwards on our own being, so that we allow that person the space. We don't know what their path is or how they're going to work it out. We can only, by working on ourselves in their presence, we can convey some of the peace that we are feeling through. Obviously, the person is having a difficult embodiment. You can't go out there, you can't change anything at all about it other than working on yourself, being in your presence, maintaining the awareness of your being. Yes, it's not an eradication, it's a cessation. It's dwelling on your sense of being, so that you don't think anything. You just sit with your friend and you just be. Does that make any sense?
Oh yeah, I understand it, and that that's the part I'm not struggling with, because he's already gone, and I didn't say that part. I'm sorry. So there's nothing to do or be for him because he's already gone. But in your response about should I be with someone who is in that thought, what you said was so appropriate, and and that's where I am for that. It's really understanding from the after the fact. There's some sort of judgment on my side, or something in my ego is saying something about that I'm really not.
I just think you have to be strong, and you have to deny those thoughts. Not deny them. You have to let them be, but you have to see that there is something there that is observing that negative thought coming up. And then something says, no, I don't want that thought. But there's something that says, no, I don't. So you just keep stepping back away from this mental activity until eventually you just see these thoughts arising, because they will arise. They arise for everybody.
Yeah.
You don't have to identify with them, do you?
No, I don't identify with that. And let me be more distinctive. What I'm wrestling with is understanding the ego's relationship with suicide, not for myself, but for my understanding in the context of what we're up to in self, self-attention and getting to our own place of self-awareness. I'm looking at this from a place of, so something in there, an ego had him commit suicide, and I don't understand that relationship. Not for me personally in dealing with it. It's really understanding, okay, this is a vessel that we're in, and who we are, or who am I, is the vessel. So in the self-awareness, and we move on to our next vessel, and our next vessel, that is the part that I'm trying to understand, is rather than the body dying naturally and the spirit moving on, this person decide to kill his body, and his spirit still moves on. So what I don't understand is it okay, or is this an ego thing that has people kill themselves?
I think it's a wrong it's a wrong emphasis. They still identify with the ego. If you really are frustrated with life, and if you don't want similar experiences, the best way is to abide in yourself and prevent further births. And that's, people don't understand it. Egocide is better than suicide, bodily suicide. And people don't get it. And it's because the concept simply, your friend probably was aware of it. If he was aware of all the knowledge that you have, he probably wouldn't have done that. And that's my take on it.
Say that again about the ego side. That was great.
Well, ego side is a better solution than suicide, bodily suicide. Because when you ego side, meaning when you kill the ego, you're done with further births and deaths. That's the best way to deal with it. So, sorry, go ahead.
No, that really, really encapsulated my answer there. And what Rob had to say was also valuable to set me up to hear what you just said.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you. So if we look at the Neṟi again, it's the eradication of the ego that's going to give you that immortal state, meaning release you from further births. So if your friend were to be here in body right now, and if he was frustrated with his life, that would be your advice for him.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. So, thank you. And then now we'll go on to the next neṟi. Anand, please.
சாதுக்கள் பிக்ஷைக்காகவன்றி அறிந்தோர் வீடுகளுக்கு அடிக்கடி செல்லுதலும் அதனிலும் அங்கே தங்கி அவர்களோடு கூடி குலாவிலும் அறவே கூடாது, அறவே அடாது. I'll read it again. சாதுக்கள் பிக்ஷைக்காக அன்றி அறிந்தோர் வீடுகளுக்கு அடிக்கடி செல்லுதலும் அதனிலும் அங்கே தங்கி அவர்களோடு கூடி குலாவிலும் அறவே அடாது.
Thank you. Robert, please.
Other than for the obtaining of alms, it is quite inappropriate for sadhus to pay regular visits to the houses of their acquaintances, and even less appropriate for them to remain there, associating with them in a convivial fashion.
So neṟi 6 goes along with neṟi 8. So we'll go ahead and read neṟi 8. I'm sorry, neṟi 7. So we'll go read the next neṟi also before going to discussion. Anand, please.
Yeah. டாக்கி, சினிமா முதலிய விடயங்களில் சாதுக்கள் காணப்படுவது அறிஞரால் அருவருக்கத்தக்க அவமானகரமாம். I'll read it again. டாக்கி, சினிமா முதலிய விடங்களில் சாதுக்கள் காணப்படுவது அறிஞரால் அருவருக்கத்தக்க அவமானகரமாம்.
Robert, please.
For sadhus to be seen in such places as the talkies or the cinema is the kind of shameful sight that will be viewed with disgust by the wise. Sounds very like Muruganar.
So these are the things, that makes this book so practical. So he is now giving some practical advice.
Yes, well, I did notice that we have sort of a neṟi sandwich, don't we? Because we've got the two really serious topics and two simple practical advices in between. It's like a sandwich, but we've got the filling on the outside, I think.
Exactly.
Bread in the middle, but,
right. So just like it talks about the lofty neṟi, and then next he gives practical neṟis.
And then he's back again with the adhiṣṭhāna, the basic ability, isn't he?
So that's typical Muruganar. So just because that's how real life is too, right? I mean, it just we go between all of this.
In her Jayanti presentation,
right.
These simple advices are things that we often want to hear.
Right.
Because people don't say them.
Exactly. So now for these two neṟis, I will. So Robert sent me an email commenting on this. I'll let him read it. Please go ahead.
Well, of course, we don't have the equivalent of sadhus in the West. We have ordained ministers, monks, nuns, and so on, who would not normally behave in the manner described. However, people in general who are serious about their sadhana might consider avoiding the sort of company or activities that are likely to be detrimental to it. I would say, in addition to that, that this is a fine balance. We can't go out there and change our lives because we think it would be nice if it was another way. The body has a destiny which it must fulfill, come what may. Bhagavan said to his mother that when he was on Pavalagundra in the temple there, that which is destined to happen will happen, and that which is not destined to happen certainly will not happen, however hard you try to make it. So basically, the journey is mainly an inner one. In general, we should avoid things which are obviously harmful to our sadhana, but we shouldn't try to mold our lives. I remember I arrived in Tirunamalai in 1980, and I immediately grasped what Bhagavan was telling me, and I wanted to stay there, forever, or blah blah blah, peace. But that's not the way it is. Arunachala draws you in, but I don't know whether people know this, but it kicks you out when your time is up. And I was kicked out. I didn't return for 18 years after that first stay of 5 years. So yes, we should always avoid things that are obviously wrong, but we can't, you know, we're most of us are going to get married, you're going to have children, we're going to have to get a job. That shouldn't affect our sadhanas in any way.
Exactly. And we can still lead a life as much as possible, right? I mean, to avoid all this high stimuli, you know, high intensity stimuli.
There's a nice passage quoted in talks by Mahatma Gandhi, and he's going to Rajkot to address a meeting, and it starts, why am I going to Rajkot? I don't even know. I'm dwelling in the self. I go where the self takes me. He didn't, you know, he couldn't even say, he didn't have a conscious intention to go to Rajkot and address a meeting and fire up the locals. No, that's not the way it is. Its destiny took him there, and he trusted it.
Interesting. At this point, I'll open up for any questions to Robert on these two neṟis, where Muruganar talks about avoiding pompous companies and also avoiding you know, excessive stimulation. He talks about talkies. That's how they referred to in movies back then, and so forth. Any questions for Robert, please?
Yeah, may I ask a question?
Sure, Umberto.
Yeah, Robert, is it okay? I mean, is it yeah, if can we summarize these two neṟis just by saying that the idea behind them is to basically avoid the unnecessary distractions in life that would drive you away from your sadhana? Basically, that's what it is, right? If it is unnecessary, then you just don't do it. But if life takes you there because of children and things like this, well, you have to. Oh, okay. Thank you.
People try to mold their lives to some kind of ascetic ideal, which just completely fails, because they love their wife, they love their children, and that destiny must be fulfilled. And there's no problem with any of that. Even Bhagavan never told anybody to go to the forest and meditate.
Exactly.
He said, go and get married, you know, just stay fixed on the self, you know, do your job. And, you know, so yes.
Thank you.
Exactly right.
In Nanyar, Bhagavan says somewhere, "Pudi manathe adaki kondirundal enge irundalum irukkalam." So, do you remember that, Robert?
Yes.
So, in other words, no matter where you are, as long as you keep your mind subsided, be humble, and no matter where you are, you can be. So you can be a monk right now, right here in the United States or Canada or UK, and as long as you keep your mind abiding in the self at all times, or keep yourself abiding in the self at all times. Any other comments or questions for Robert?
No, just in a lighter vein, luckily there was no TV in Muruganar's time. Otherwise, right inside their place, they would have had all these talkies.
Yeah, exactly, right. So they were fortunate that way, right? Less stimulation. There's more. There's not only TV now we have internet and all sorts of YouTube and so forth, so which constantly keep people occupied. So we have to stay away from them as much as possible.
I brought it up mainly because as today's sadhakas, we have to be careful about that too.
Exactly.
Yeah, because it's, I cannot claim I am a sadhu, but if I want to be a sadhaka, then any distraction, including all these external attractions, they would be detrimental.
Exactly.
Oh, I have another question, very quick.
Sure.
Yeah, about the talkies. What is the talkies exactly?
Talkies is that's how they called the cinema, referred to the movie theaters back then.
Oh, okay, all right. Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Back then, there was no moving. There was movement, but no talking, no sound. Soundtrack came later, and then came the moving. Finally everything began to move, so it became movie. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you for that.
Okay. Now let's go to the next neṟi, final neṟi for today, which is neṟi 8, and it's also the probably one of the powerful ones. Anand, please.
ஆரோப அகங்காரமற்ற இடத்தில் இயல்பாக விளங்கும் அதிஷ்டான ஆன்மஸ்வரூப ஞானமே அருள் என்பதன் பொருளாம். ஆரோப அகங்காரமற்ற இடத்தில் இயல்பாகவே விளங்கும் அதிஷ்டான ஆன்மஸ்வரூப ஞானமே அருள் என்பதன் பொருளாம்.
Robert, please. Yeah.
Awareness of oneself, one's real nature, which is the foundation, adhiṣṭhāna, that shines naturally in the place where the superimposed ego is eradicated, alone is the meaning of what is called grace.
Yeah. With regarding this neṟi, where Muruganar says awareness of oneself, one's real nature, which is the foundation or adhiṣṭhāna, that shines naturally in the place where the superimposed ego is eradicated, alone is the meaning of what is called grace. Robert pointed out two key words to me, actually three key words. One is adhiṣṭhāna. And Robert pulls this meaning for the word adhiṣṭhāna as meaning base, or abode, seat, foundation. Basically, it is that upon which something else rests or stands. Another phrase that he pointed out was superimposed. Aropa means superimposed. So it basically means an erroneous attribution to an object of a quality or property that belongs to another. Tamil lexicon. It is the error in which we, the infinite self, perceive ourselves as a finite jiva, the individual. So regarding this, Robert also brought up a verse from a work called Olival Vodukam. I'll let Robert read it, please.
If the worldly bond falls away, the jiva will automatically come to rest in the Lord, just as someone swinging on a swing will come to rest on the ground if the rope breaks. Verse 349 of Tirukkural speaks of the ending of birth upon the cutting off of the attachments created by desire. So that leads into the Kural.
Yeah.
One of the main reasons for the attachment is
right. Before we jump into the Kural, you explain the Olival Vodukam verse, that analogy.
Yes.
And can you explain that, please?
Yes. In this comparison, the individual self, jiva, pasu, is compared to someone swinging on a swing. The ropes supporting it are the worldly bonds, pasam, consisting of the mind and senses, and the solid earth is pati, shivam, the self, or God in Christian terms. Mm-hmm. As long as these ropes are in place, the jiva will swing endlessly backwards and forwards, oscillating between desire and fear, attraction and revulsion. However, if the ropes are cut away, it will come to rest on the solid ground of the self. So, right. A few years ago, when we had young grandchildren, we used to take them to the swings all the time, and they loved going backwards and forwards. And it's fun in a way, isn't it? But imagine you're on the swing for an hour, a day, a year, a lifetime, 10 lives. You'd soon get tired of the swing. being drawn towards objects, and then, no, I don't like that, and going towards others. It's a permanent oscillation. But once that desire is ended, and you don't end it by saying, "Oh, I don't want that." You end it by turning inwards and dwelling on the self and realizing that the desires are, in the end, illusory. Then all that ends, and you just drop down onto the ground, your own being. So that's the reason I quoted this, to sort of flesh out the meaning of that word adhiṣṭhāna that was in the verse.
Right. And with regards to the Tirukkural you just quoted, I'll let Anand read the Tamil verse. Please, Anand.
Yeah. பற்றற்ற கண்ணே பிறப்பறுக்கும் மற்ற நிலையாமை காணப்படும். Once again, பற்றற்ற கண்ணே பிறப்பு அறுக்கும் மற்ற நிலையாமை காணப்படும்.
Yeah. Robert?
If we cut away attachments from birth, we will be freed. Otherwise, impermanence alone shall we perceive.
So that again stresses the neṟi.
Yes, because it's the second part of the Orivalolikam verse points out that the reason for this continued oscillation is the attraction, the desire to grasp at illusory objects. If we realize the objects are like a mirage, when we're in the desert and we're thirsty, we can see the mirage, but we don't go there because we know it's a mirage. So the mirage will always be there, but we give up the desire to take any water from it because there isn't any. There's no food in it, no sustenance in those empty appearances.
Right. And going back to the neṟi, Robert pointed out another key word, and that is grace. So with regards to this, Robert pointed out this talk from Talks with Ramana Maharshi, number 496. Could you please go ahead and read it, please, Robert, and explain?
Inasmuch as you, being a man, now understand that there is a higher power guiding you, it is due to grace. Grace is within you. And I can give a little quotation to add to that.
Sure.
Talk 398. Is not grace the gift of the Guru? God, grace, and Guru are all synonymous and also eternal and immanent. Is not the self already within? Is it for the Guru to bestow it by his look? If a Guru thinks so, he does not deserve the name. So grace is our nature. It's really, grace is the self in action, really. The self bringing us back to ourself. It's no different from our own self.
I like that. Self pulling you, basically.
Yes.
Right. Thank you. Any questions to Robert on this neṟi?
I have one, basically, forgive my ignorance. Where are these talks from? The 496 and the other one you said?
Oh, that Talks with Ramana Maharshi.
These two books, which are both kind of synonymous.
Yeah.
Most people that follow Ramana's teachings know about talks, but they don't necessarily know about conscious immortality. This overlaps a lot because Venkataramanaya and Brunton were present at the same talks a lot of the time, and they both recorded some of the same material. And this is Brunton's version, and this is Venkataramaya, who became Ramana. I can't remember his sadhu name now, but yeah, all the quotations are from these two. And then Orivalolikam, again, is a different book. This is a very useful book because it's one of the few spiritual books which actually give you practical illustrations of how you could apply some of these things to yourself, which it does to me anyway. Just the analogy, if I imagine the swing and imagine the ropes, it all forces home, you know, the meaning, the practical force of, you know, of the teaching. So I've always found that a very useful book as well.
Right.
But we can give people details of anything that and where to get them.
Yeah.
When we can.
Yeah, it's we have most of your books here in our center, and I'll also think we just have to order some more Oliver Odegum books, so we'll get that here. So if anyone wants it, they can always reach us. Any other questions or comments regarding Neṟi 8?
Okay.
Okay. Anant, did you want to say something?
Yeah, no, I may have missed the point, but adhiṣṭhāna and aropa are generally exemplified by the rope and the snake.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes, I made that was in the notes, but we didn't read that bit out.
Well, it was, yeah, I sure. Yeah, but then the gravity as a pull is missing in the rope and snake example.
Yes, they're partial analogies, aren't they?
This
No
example,
analogy fits everything totally because it's analogy. It's not a reality.
Good. So thank you.